Triumph, one of the greatest British marques to ever exist. From its saloons to its motorcycles, the Triumph name is one etched into the history of transport, defining an entire generation of motoring, from its early Dolomite Roadster to its Dolomite Saloon, and of course, its 2000. But sadly for Triumph, it would go the way of the dodo, becoming extinct and degrading to the point of no return, when it would eventually fade away. The fall of Triumph wasn't gradual. It was at a specific point in time, a moment and decision which killed the marque and cemented its future decline. And that moment was the fierce battle between the Rover P10 concept and the Triumph Puma, a decision that killed the Triumph name. This is the story of the Triumph Puma, a car that could have been the saviour of Triumph, that unfortunately proved to be its downfall. Hello everybody and welcome to this video on the Triumph Puma, what some have called the greatest British Leyland mistake ever. If you're not subscribed already, please make sure to do so. It really does help me out and you get to see more of this. More history videos, more cars and classics uncovered, and more projects. Make sure to like the video if you liked it and share if you want other people to see it. Drop me a comment below. Do you have any Triumph BL, BMC or Leyland memories? Let me know in the comments below. And what do you think of the Triumph Puma and its related models? Do you think their future was stolen? But without further delay, let's get into this video on one of Triumph's greatest what-ifs. The late 60s were a time of great turmoil for the British car industry and many abroad as well. Mergers, strikes, general unrest and the challenging world of a more globalised market made competition fierce. The result of this in Britain was the merger of all mergers, a merger of the majority of British car firms that had already been merged into mergers such as Leyland and British Motor Holdings. But they would also merge, becoming the merger to merge them all, into the biggest merger of British car companies to ever exist, British Leyland. A big happy family perhaps? Wrong. British Leyland was far from it. After all, succeeding companies don't just inherit the success, they inherit the problems as well. But British Leyland had other problems. Amongst them all was the big one: finite resources and too many intercompeting brands. You see, Morris and Austin had been competing and joined forces to create BMC in the 50s, and this spawned a wave of badge engineering, which in the lower end of the market was fine. But there was one uncomfortable partnership that didn't sit quite as easily as all the others. Right at the top end, Triumph and Rover. Fierce rivals in earlier years had joined forces when brought under the Leyland Motors banner. Both of these companies, even though they were linked by a parent, were still in the marketplace as rivals. Both had their phenomenal saloons, the Triumph 2000 and 2.5 PI, and the Rover P6. Both were advanced and played to different strengths. While the market was big enough for both, the checkbook of Leyland wasn't. In the second half of the 1960s, Rover and Triumph were looking at the future of their saloons. After all, they had launched in 1963, entering a fierce battle, ultimately resulting in a stalemate by the end of 1967, with both models being right on the money. It was just a question of preference and, of course, availability. Rover would develop their P8, a car that was ultimately far too advanced for its time. Triumph would go all in on a new range of cars, the Triumph Lynx, its Bobcat, and of course its new big saloon, the Triumph Puma. Development would start on the Puma in 1966, according to former Triumph engineer Nigel Garton, interviewed by AROnline. The project was conceived to maintain Triumph's impressive growth, capturing the success of the prior models, but rationalising the range, taking it down to 3 basic platforms: the Bobcat to replace the 1300, Puma to replace the 2000, and Lynx replacing the GT6. All with modern Italian styling, with conventional engineering, powered by a brand new range of engines. The aim was to launch the new big saloon between 1972 and 1974, after the Innisbrook restyle had run its course. The Puma would follow the well-proven Triumph formula, perfected in the 2000 and 2500. The suspension would be carried over from the previous cars and tweaked for the new body and engines, which meant all-round independent suspension with the McPherson struts, lower wishbones up front, and coils with semi-trailing arms at the rear. The car would be rear-wheel drive. The gearbox would be a new development, a 5-speed manual, a welcome addition for the far more demanding motorist of tomorrow. Engines would be next. The all-new power plants would instead be a development of the straight-six engines featured in the previous models, an evolution rather than revolution, but there was one engine that was all new, the 4-cylinder slant 4 under development for Saab, and for the new Bobcat, and crossover model, the Dolomite. The new 6-cylinder engines would be created by Jim Parkinson and Triumph engineer Mike Lowsby, with the new 6-cylinder engine receiving the code name PE166, intended to power the Innisbrook Triumph 2000 and 2.5 PI, as well as the new Puma and Bobcat. The early proposal was quite simply an overhead cam conversion for the existing Triumph 6, with inline valves combined with the base engine's 74.7mm bore, but it was found it would have limited benefits due to the lack of real estate to increase the valve area and gain more accurate operation at higher engine speeds, meaning this old new engine would run out of puff in the high rev range. Unfortunately, the issues with this thrifty plan were starting to show. The current bottom end, which was going to remain largely unchanged, was already at its absolute limits of capacity. After all, this very engine can trace its roots back to the 803cc 4-cylinder engine of the 1953 Standard 8, which, by the 1970s, was absolutely prehistoric. Meanwhile, the styling was emerging. As per the original requirements for the new range, the Italian stylist Michelotti, a veteran of Triumph, who designed many of their popular models, would create a new saloon. The new Puma, though, would curiously wear its parent company's badge, maybe an indication that the styling could have been used somewhere else. It would appear with the same 3-box layout as the previous big saloons, but far more muscular to fit in with the new world it would find itself in. Progressive and modern, but the team felt it didn't quite fit the bill for Triumph, so it was decided that Standard Triumph International styling team would give it a go themselves, with the assistance of freelance stylist William Towns. Looking at the photos of Michelotti's Puma, you can see why they decided this. It looks curiously Australian. On the other side of the fence, while Triumph were flying, Rover were failing. The P8, its new car which it had poured development time into, was at death's door. The revolutionary saloon had come up against several challenges. With its advanced suspension, new engines and body, it was butting up uncomfortably against another awkward bedfellow, Jaguar. A high-profile crash test scuppered the P8, and in 1969 Rover were forced to recalibrate and were asked to develop a more conventional offering, which didn't step on the toes of Jaguar. This resulted in the Rover P10. Rover and Triumph by this time were now part of the same division. They would find themselves battling it out again, not for market share or the hearts and minds of the public. They were fighting for something far more impactful: the hearts and minds of British Leyland's board. Resources were scarce at the time, marked by declining standards in production due to the industrial unrest, and of course the many failed and over-budget projects meant a choice needed to be made. After all, development costs money. Cash flow was becoming an issue, and having so many cars in development at one time would be a financial disaster waiting to happen under the circumstances of the time. Therefore, it was decided that Rover and Triumph would shoot it out in 1970. Both were in a duel in design and concept. But this wasn't just a simple model showcase. This was a referendum on the company's midline saloon manufacturer. Which badge would carry BL into the 70s and beyond. One would be chosen, and the other would be pigeonholed into oblivion. Both marques were of the same pedigree. Both cars were competing for the same market within the same group of car companies, and British Leyland needed to become rational to survive, rather than competing with itself. But at the time, British Leyland wasn't just competing with itself, it was destroying itself from the inside. At the time, it was reported to the board by Donald Stokes that there were over 100 outstanding labour disputes, crippling supply and ultimately BL's bottom line. And with this as the backdrop, a decision would be made. Rover's P10 would be chosen, and Triumph's Puma would be dropped from engineering. In December 1970, Triumph's board would convene to digest the news. They knew this was an indicator, not just for Triumph saloons, but for the very future of the marque. The last Triumph saloon had been killed before it had even made the prototype stages. This decision allowed Rover to thrive and Triumph to fall. But it wasn't quite over yet. You see, while Triumph had been taken out of the running to engineer the car, they would still present in February 1971 in the styling shootout. Inevitably, the David Bache design of the P10 would win out, with it becoming the first special division car, the Rover SD1. Triumph's Puma development, though, would pay dividends. The 5-speed gearbox would be developed into the LT77, which would feature in the Rover SD1. The 6-cylinder engine turning point would lead to the PE146 and PE166, which we all know today. This would leave for Triumph only the Bobcat in active development, after the Lynx and Puma were canned. But the Bobcat would also be cancelled, with Triumph's current models, the Dolomite, its saloons, the 2000 and 2500, left to plod on until 1977, being 14 years old by the time of their cancellation. This showed just how BL regarded the marque, allowing it to continue to sell such outdated models. These were, however, still somewhat competitive with newer cars of the time, which shows just how phenomenal Triumph really were. Some see the Puma as a mere project cancellation. It was more than that. It was the decision that took Triumph out of the future of the British motor industry, allowing the brand to degrade to a mere badge, with the last car they produced being a simple Honda Ballade with a Triumph badge stuck on the front. A stark contrast from Triumph's heyday. And that is the end of the video. What is your opinion on the Triumph Puma and its related models? Do you think it was a mistake to choose the P10? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, thank you for watching, keep watching, and remember to subscribe for more of this, and I'll see you in the next one.